Cincinnati. I believe we have on the call with us some other guests who have joined. Our apologies if we didn't catch everybody's name as you were joining. It's Megan from the National Coalition for the Homeless with us.
Dr. Barbara, this is Francis.
Francis, you're on. Okay. All right, Francis. Oh, fine. Francis, introduce yourself to our audience so they'll know your importance. You were with us in Jacksonville just recently. You're one of the big leaders of the National Coalition for the Homeless. Tell people about why it is so important for people to focus on voters who are homeless or unhoused. They have the right to vote, right, Francis?
Yes, they sure do. Thanks so much, Dr. Barbara, Daryl, Karen. I've met you virtually, and Daryl and Dr. Barbara I saw in person in Jacksonville, getting people out to vote. Thanks for the work you're doing. My name is Francis Kalombo Ngoy. I'm the National Director of the Bring America Home Now campaign. It's a campaign spearheaded by the National Coalition for the Homeless. And the campaign is the People's Campaign. And the People's Campaign is centered on housing, livable income, civil rights, racial equity, and healthcare. And we're focusing today on civil rights. You know, the pillar of our democracy is the right to vote. You know, voting is so critical because it's your voice. And if you can see across the country, many states and many forces are coming against the right people to vote. Why is it? Somebody's scared because they know that when people go out and vote, they speak their minds, something will change. And they're doing everything possible to ensure that you don't go out to vote. But what I can tell you is voting is important. And why is it important? Because we as people across the country being disfranchised, grouping disfranchised, and one of those things that we focus on NCH, which is the National Coalition for the Homeless, is the unhoused population. You know, our staff is actually made up of people with experience. The board is made up of people with experience or those who have experienced homelessness. And there are many barriers to voting for those community members. There are like ID issues. There are also moving place, like no address. As we hear the story earlier about Leila's mother, who has a house, has a sole place to stay. Yet, her right to vote was taken away without even knowing. Now imagine people who are actually moving place to place, being pushed from place to place. As you know, the encampment, people are being, first of all, we shouldn't be using words like sweeping, sweep. Nobody should be swept away by anybody, by any entity. And people in the camps are being moved from place to place. Whenever they are moved from place, all their property are being lost. Their medications, their IDs that they actually had before is being lost. All those strategies is a strategy to ensure that people don't vote and that their votes. And that's an important group to vote because the most impacted should be at the forefront of voting because their vote is their voice. They need to make sure the people who represent them represent who they are, represent their voices. And young people, I know many people said voting is not that important, it doesn't matter to me. It does matter. If it didn't matter, nobody would be fighting against it. Nobody could actually be putting barriers to ensure that you don't vote. If you have friends who are saying, I'm not going to vote this year, if there's ever been any important election to vote in, this is the election to vote in for sure. Encourage your friends.
Thank you.
Encourage your neighbors. Encourage young people to show up because young people are the most powerful group we have in this country. When young people rise and stand up to vote, America vote the right way. So
thank you, Francis. Thank you. And we want people to understand housing is on the ballot this year, folks, all throughout the country. What kind of housing policy are we going to have? Will people be able to afford housing? Will we be building affordable housing? Will people be able to buy a home? Will they have those kind of resources? That is on the ballot this year. Don't be fooled. Don't be sitting around thinking that everything's going to always be the way it is. It's time for some change in our country, and you can be an instrument of change. Now, one thing I want everyone to be clear about the homeless population, the unhoused population. If you don't have a permanent address, you can still vote. You can still register to vote. Don't let anybody tell you that you must have a, quote, residence. You can use all kinds of different methods to establish an address for which you are identified as a voter. Don't let folks confuse you. We're going to talk more about this. I wanted to check to see if we've been joined by the National Council of Negro Women. I didn't know if Danyale has been able to join us yet, but I'm just opening up the platform to see. Oh, there you are. Thank you.
I am here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, we're so happy you're here. Introduce yourself. Tell people about what NCNW is doing and why you are part of this Cincinnati activation.
Thank you. I am Danyale E. Marshall, Cincinnati Section, National Council of Negro Women, President, and very excited about what we have going on here in our mobilization in Cincinnati area and the surrounding tri-state. We are an organization of more than 2.5 million strong with over 30 affiliates. And with those affiliates and partnerships that we have with people that are nonpartisan to Divine Nine to in between those as well. We're mobilizing to get people registered to vote. We're mobilizing to get people informed on how they can check to make sure they weren't kicked out of the system, to make certain that they are still registered to vote if they haven't been. We're mobilizing in the community our 17-year-olds that turn 18 later this year but are still eligible to vote in our high schools on a weekly basis. We're partnering with NAACP at events as well as you all this Saturday. Right, September 28th, We're going to kick it. We're going to kick it in all of the communities. We're already community partners with a lot of the places and locations that we'll be at anyway, including Kings and Queens. We're very proud to serve them on a biweekly basis here within CNW. So we're excited to get people registered to vote. We're excited to get people excited about being registered to vote and to make certain that we're, helping out our brothers and our sisters who were formerly incarcerated, who are eligible to vote but may not have the confidence to do so in the arenas that they're currently in. So we're going to those communities and we're meeting people where they're at to make sure they know where they are, whose they are, and who they are in the community of Cincinnati. Very exciting.
My. Wonderful. And Daryl, October 7th is the voting deadline in Ohio, folks. Did you hear me? October 7th, you got to get registered. You got to get ready, right? Danyale, we want people to make sure that they are registering, and even if you think that you are registered, said, hey, Barbara, I just voted in the primary. I know I'm good. No, you're not. You better check your voter registration to make sure you are good. That's the only way you know if you're good, right?
Absolutely. That is the only way. We have QR codes and we have websites here available for everyone to go out there and check if they're registered in the Cincinnati area or in the state of Ohio. So we want to make sure that people are well informed and it's easily to do on September 28th and beyond.
Right. And we, of course, all the civil rights groups have been, we sued the state of Ohio several times for all kinds of voter infractions. I know I've sued, when I was at the Lawyers Committee, sued the state at least 3 times. One of the problems in your state, of course, this went all the way up to the Supreme Court, is this problem of what we call voter caging, which is an action that is taken to actually send these postcards that people don't understand what they are. They put them in the trash. The Supreme Court agreed with us that 60% of all people put them in the trash. They just ruled the wrong way on the overall case and still allowed the state to do this voter caging, which is the process of sending a postcard that people then look at and trash and don't send back. And they assume that if you don't send it back, that somehow you are no longer at your address. And they proceed. Yeah. And, so this is an issue. And, Daryl, tell our national audience and about what we found out in Jacksonville and how we had to take the attack on this unpublished, at that moment, unannounced, inactive voters list.
Oh, yeah, Barbara. While we were down in Jacksonville, we were able to discover that they've actually moved some 90,000 voters to an inactive list.
90,000? Did you just say 90,000? 90,000?
Yeah, yes, Barbara. 90,000 voters were moved to an inactive list, which in essence is really a waiting room to be purged. That is, they're just waiting now to remove them completely from the voting rolls in Jacksonville and Duval County. And the interesting part of that is the little flimsy voting cards that you've made mention of, the postcards that get sent out. What they tried to do is they said, well, we sent out this little postcard through U.S. Postal Service, and if they didn't respond to the postcard, then we moved them to the inactive list and put them in the waiting room to be purged permanently from the voting rolls. And we know that, if you send folks some stuff that looks like it's junk mail that they receive in the mailbox, what are they going to do? They're going to throw it in the trash can. They're going to throw it on the side counter. They're not going to read it because, if it's anything that's significant, they're going to receive an email about it. They're going to receive some other communication about it. So that's what we discovered was happening in Jacksonville, Barbara. And when the supervisor of the board there, a supervisor of elections there in Jacksonville, caught wind of that we were there and that we were holding these press conferences in front of his office, he decided to come on out and confront it and talk to us about it, and then tried to justify it, saying that he didn't have the money to notify people that they had been illegally removed or have been removed and put into the waiting room to be purged from the voting rolls, which is just horrible. But then to come back and say that, well, it's no longer 90,000, it's 89,000 now. This is ridiculous, folks. This is the reason that we do this I'll Rise and Vote activation and concert series, because we're talking about rising up over the barriers that are being put in front of the voters, particularly the voters of color and young voters that are saying that are trying to prevent them and make it more difficult and complicated for them to activate their votes, for them to get out and vote. But we're going to bring notice out. We're going to bring out the sun and be certain that everyone sees that what they need to do to get their vote on, and that's why we're so excited about Cincinnati. One of the things, Barbara, that Francis pointed out, and Francis, I'm so excited to hear you talk about how people that are experiencing homelessness have the opportunity to vote. Because the statement that we like to use, Barbara, is that just because you lose your home doesn't mean you lose your vote. And we've got to be sure we get that information out there, that just because you lose your home doesn't mean you lose your vote. You still have that right to vote. We've got to be certain that they get it on, Barbara.
That's right. And Karen, you're a big advocate for kings and queens to make sure that people come out to this free cookout to get a good meal, get some dance on, get some your voter registration done, get some voter checking done. Remember, we're talking about all these problems with inactive list challengers, et cetera. All that means, folks, is you need to check your voter registration. If you're not registered, re-register. But you got to do it by October 7th in Ohio. You can't sit around waiting. You must do these things now. So, Karen, tell people what you want them to do on Saturday.
I just want you to come out. I want you to come out. Yes, enjoy the music, the festivities, have a good meal. But more importantly, I want you to get some education on why you should vote, on the importance of the vote. I want people to know that they're not forgotten. I want people to feel like they are just as much a part of the system and the change that can come, and it all starts with your vote. You got to come out. Just come outside on Saturday. Come to the areas that we're going to be at, but specifically Winton Terrace. There's so many folks there that have a voice, and we want to help them be able to utilize and make that voice happen. And Saturday is your day. We're going to be there. I mean, I know many organizations and groups are championing this get people voted registration all day, every day. But Saturday is your impactful, important day. Come on outside, people. Come on outside and let's do the right thing.
And if you're around the country, folks, and you're listening, you got family and friends in Cincinnati, come on, call them. Tell them that they need to show up and show out, that they need to make sure they're doing all of these things to protect their vote. And remember that we've mentioned, 15 states that have voter registration deadlines by October 9th, and most of them are on October 7th. People, you got to do this now, right? You got to get involved. One thing, Jamise, that I love, and Danielle, that I love about Cincinnati is all the